Afternoon, y'all. Gearhead back in the garage here. Today we're with Cherry. I was going to do some front end work on her, control arms and track bar, things like that, but checked out the control arms. They don't look that bad. The track bar, however, is in pretty bad shape. Probably go ahead and replace on that. Another reason we were in here today is it's developed a kind of rattle, grind almost over the last couple of weeks. Hadn't really driven it much because of that, but I did do some checking on it underneath once we got her up on the poor man's lift. As you can see, the jack stands there. We've got the Nissan down off of it now, but it sounds to me like we might have a bearing bad in the engine. So I'm going to pull the filter off. I'm going to take it up to the machine shop, have them cut it open for us, and see just how bad the metal is inside that thing before we go any further on the front end. So you guys might get to see an engine rebuild on the channel. Wouldn't that be fun? Maybe for y'all, but not for me. I don't mind doing it though. We've done it on the Nissan already. We've done a quasi rebuild on Cherry. Broke a piston on the number 5 cylinder of the skirt. You know, gearhead here. Drove it home about 4 or 5 miles with no water in it. Did fine for about 20,000 miles, something like that, after the overheat issue. But we did manage to break a skirt off the number 5 piston. Common problem for the Cherokee inline 6s when you overheat them. But we didn't do a full rebuild on that. We just pulled the pistons and rods out the top, put new bearings on the connecting rods, and put new pistons and rings in it. Didn't bother with taking the crank out, because we didn't have a engine hoist at the time. So we may get into an engine rebuild here before I really wanted to, but at least you guys will get to see it. So I'm going to pull the filter off. I'm going to take it up to the machine shop, get him cut it open. See how bad the metal is inside that filter, and I'll bring it home and show it to you guys once I get that done. Well, I'm back from the machine shop. Fortunately, there was no metal in the filter, so it doesn't look like we're going to get to do a rebuild just yet, but we do have a problem we got to figure out. It sounded like it was a flex plate bolt on the front of the transmission where it bolts to the engine. It's what the starter runs on to start things up and get them going. I've had to tighten on it before. The bolts on those things on the Jeeps are known to come loose. So I have done that once in the past, and I'm probably going to take that access off the bottom. It's just a little dust shield on the bottom half of the bell housing that you take off, and rotate the flex plate around and check on the bolts in there. So I'm probably going to do that. I'll take you under there, get you out of the sky, show you what I'm going to be pulling off and looking at while I'm under there. But if it's not that, I'm not sure what it is at this point. But we don't have, you know, metal in the filter. Didn't have metal in the filter, and I don't know what it is. We're just going to have to figure it out, and y'all get to see. All right, we're underneath Cherry now. What we're looking at is the oil pan here, drain plug here, and this little plate that my finger's on that runs across the bottom of the bell housing here is the access panel for the flex plate. We got about 4 bolts we got to take out, and that'll just give us access to the bolts that hold the flex plate to the torque converter, and that's what I'm guessing is what's making our noise. But I'm going to attack getting this plate off and accessing the bolts on the back side of that flex plate where the torque converter bolts up, and we'll bring you guys back in once I get this access off and show you what those bolts look like. Alright, we've got the dust shield off of the front of the transmission here, looking at the back of the flex plate here. And this bolt right here is one we're after. There are 4 of them all together. This one seems pretty tight. Not wanting to come loose on me right away, but I'm going to spin the flywheel or the flex plate around with the crank bolt to access all 4 of these to make sure that all 4 of them are tight. I am hearing a little bit of a crunch when I switch directions from clockwise to counterclockwise, but I'm not sure what that is. I'm going to spin the flex plate around to get to all 4 of these, make sure they're all 4 tight, and right now it's not looking like that's our problem, but we won't know until we turn it all the way around and check all 4 of them. But I'll let you guys know what I find. Well, I've checked all 4 of the flex plate bolts underneath there, and everything seems to be in order as far as those go. So I'm going to proceed with the track bar. Basically, this just keeps the front axle in alignment left to right, keeps it from shifting back and forth. I can kind of hear it knocking around, and the bushings look pretty bad underneath there. So we're going to go ahead and replace this. We'll spin a new oil filter on, and probably going to take it up to the machine shop, let him listen to it. Before I do that though, I'll listen to some of the accessory drives, see if maybe they're transmitting some noise through the block that I'm hearing, because I am hearing the noise up top, the top of the head, and also on the bottom of the block. So I'm going to take it and let the machine shop listen to it, see if he's got any ideas what it might be if I can't find an accessory drive that's going bad on it. But I'm going to get to this, get it put in, and we'll go from there. I'll fill you guys in a little later. We've got the new track bar in, and just to give you guys an idea where it is and what it does, it attaches on the passenger side over here on the front side of the axle. A little difficult to get to the nut on the back of the bolt here, but stick a 14mm in the slot in there, 14mm on the side out here on the outside. Just kind of work them back and forth, bolt will come out. Of course, if it's rusty like this one is, you might have a trouble the first time, but this is probably the 3rd track bar that I've put in this Jeep. They're not good for about 50 to 70,000 miles, depending on how you drive, how hard you're on them, and how much you get it off-road. The back and forth of off-road will kind of wear them out a little quicker. On the driver's side, it attaches right here, just to the frame rail. So you attach the frame rail on the driver's side, and you're attached to the axle on the passenger side. And like I said, it keeps the axle in place, keeps it from shifting left to right, as you're going down the road. Most of the death wobble in these things is actually from the track bar. When you hit a big bump on the highway, the axle starts to wobble and shake back and forth, causing the whole Jeep to shake back and forth. But we've got it in, we've got it tightened up. Got to put the grease fitting in over here on the driver's side, and still got to tighten the bolt down over here on the passenger side. Just wanted to show you guys what it looked like installed and where it is in relationship to underneath of the Jeep. Well, we're wrapped up on Cherry here. I've got her back off the poor man's lift, sitting down on the ground. I did add a quart of oil to her. She was a little bit low. I don't think that that's going to cause the problem that we're hearing in the engine, at least that I'm hearing in the engine. But I'm going to fire her up, take her for a ride around the block, probably listen to the auxiliary drives before I go. When I say I'm listening to drives, it's an old shade tree mechanics trick. Long extension, stick it to anything solid on the engine basically, and then stick it to your ear, kind of let you hear what's going on in there. I am going to take it to the machine shop though, kind of get an opinion from him, see what he thinks is going on. Good news is it's not a bearing, so don't think we need a rebuild, but she is due an oil change. We'll get that changed one of these days. Maybe bring y'all in on that. It's kind of boring though, not really much to see. Until then, don't take no wooden nickels, and be good. Somebody's got to.